Namaste and good morning everyone. I Nishi Verma, Research Program Officer at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan Nai Delhi, extend my heartiest welcome to you all to IMPRI #Web Policy Learning. We are here on last day of 3-day online certificate training program on Women-led Sustainable and Decentralized Water Resource Management, a multi-stakeholders perspective. This training program is being organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, in collaboration with IMPRI Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, New Delhi. Women are most often the collectors, users, and managers of water in the household and the farmers of irrigated and rain-fed crops. Women have consequently accumulated considerable knowledge about this resource, from its quality and reliability to acceptable storage methods. The advantages of engaging women in water management should by now be obvious. But unfortunately, women themselves are often unaware of their potential value and are not involved in water user associations, public water management bodies, and water committees, thus hindering the success of water management efforts. The lack of participation of women further hampers social equity and initiatives for empowering them. Increasing women involvement through policies and reforms in water management would bring benefits to individuals, society, and the conservation of masses. If sustainable resource development is the goal, local ownership and regulation are critical. For this to be truly successful, all users and stakeholders should be involved in developing water management and irrigation programs, including and perhaps first and foremost women. It is important to ensure that the water sector becomes more gender aware, a process that should begin with training programs for community and other grassroots mobilizers in this field. This 3-day online certificate training program precisely aims to do this. In these 3 days, we have an excellent and eminent panel of experts who would be sharing their knowledge on the above theme. The patron for the program is Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, Executive Director, NIDM New Delhi. Our conveners include Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, Head ECDRM, NIDM New Delhi, Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and Editorial Director at IMPRI. The moderator of the session is Dr. Simi Mehta. The coordinators of this online certificate training program are Ms. Kopal Verma from NIDM, Nishi Verma, Malcolm Anthony, Mahima Kapoor, and Ritika Sundar from IMPRI. I am sure you all must have gained a lot from previous 2 sessions with our experts from yesterday's session, Ms. Anjali Makhija, Chief Operating Officer, SM Sehgal Foundation, Dr. Marcela D'Souza, Director, WOTR Center for Resilient Studies, and Dr. Mansi Balbhargava, Entrepreneur, Researcher, and Educator, former Executive Director, Seki Waters. Also, Mr. Ranjan K. Panda, Waterman of Odisha, Convener, Water Initiatives Odisha, and Professor Varsha Khandkar, Faculty Marketing, Indian Institute of Management, Nagpur. And before starting today's session, I would like to share with you the housekeeping announcements once again. Please join the meeting on time and ensure at least 80% attendance on the 3-day online certificate training course for obtaining certificates. There is allotment of 15 to 20 minutes for question and answers after each lecture by our eminent experts, and the questions will be moderated by Dr. Simi to ensure that they are answered in the best possible way. Hence, please feel free to write your questions on Q&A box only and not on chat box, posting it by your name and not as an anonymous attendee. Also, please keep the questions precise and refrain from making any general comments to save time and learn more from this certificate training program. Now, I would like to introduce you to the first speaker for the session, Mr. V.R. Raman, Head of Policy, WaterAid India, National Convener, Public Health Resource Network. Mr. V.R. Raman is a public policy expert with over 25 years of experience in multiple human development sectors. His involvement has been into research, advocacy, administration, implementation, and teaching of various aspects of public policies and programs in different states of India and globally associated with government agencies, large-scale programs, civil society groups, and academic institutions. He is currently working as the head of policy with WaterAid India. He is also the national convener of the Public Health Resource Network. Community-based water resource management is an area that he has worked across states. I welcome you, sir, to IMPRI #Web Policy Learning. We all look forward to learning from you, and over to you.
All right. Thanks, Nishi, and also Simi, Dr. Simi, Dr. Arjun, and all others here. And I see that there are over 60 people now, and I hope more people will be coming in. So let me start, sharing my screen and take you through the topic of today. And so I hope you can see my screen now, and I'm putting it into full screen mode.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah. All right. So this is about building action towards community level disaster preparedness and resilience. How can women-led water resource management work for this? So the picture, the cover picture itself, you can see that what boys are doing here and what girls are doing here. So that the focus is on the girl here, and you can also see what the contribution of the male in this process. So that's why I have chosen this beautiful photograph by Sam Vishwanathan. So I'll have little more detail to these issues while I'm going forward. This is something that is not the desirable, balance of the community that we are seeing in this picture, and I'll be building on further on this specific thoughts, and then going into the specifics of water resource management. And also, as an introduction, my entry into community-based water resource management happened as part of the National Literacy Mission in 1993. So this is 27 years now. So we had one specific initiative as part of the literacy mission, which was about community-based watershed development. From then to now I am full-time into the water sector, water sector. At that time, it was one of the activities that we used to do as part of our education-related initiative. And later, when I entered into the health sector also, we had lot many things to do with water, but that was more about water quality management and preventing contamination of water bodies, etc. But now it is about mainstream water sanitation and hygiene. So this over this journey of the last 27, 28 years, and also my informal work prior to that. So it's about, so if I add my informal work, my water journey is, it's from 1988. So, I mean, little bit over 3 decades. So I've seen this, changing scenario in water sector over the last, 3 decades, how things are doing in different states, and also in some parts of the world, including Africa, Latin America, and all that. So this session will bring in some of those elements, because it is a overall 30-minute kind of presentation, and then rest of the time we will go for discussions and question answers. Even that 30 minutes, I would like to reduce and go for question answers and discussion as it is required. Unless there are sufficient questions, then I'll elaborate on some of these things till the time. I mean, this is the time is, as I understand, is till 11:20, and the next session will start probably at 11:30 or something like that. So going to this, generally in an online session, if it was an offline session, I would have definitely gone for physical competitions, but I can only narrate at this point in time, and all of you cannot join this competition. So one of the thing is, we used to do generally a competition in many of the sessions about water. One competition that we used to conduct is about fetching water. So if you can, I mean, I can only narrate. I mean, that's a limitation. So it is something like, teaching you swimming online. So this is, you can only feel it. Even, induce you to, the specific situation may not be sufficient because of only voice and my face is available here. So if you have to just think about for a moment, if you have to fetch some 50 liter of water at one point in time, 50 liter of water, one point in time. So it can be, 2 or 3 vessels. One can be put on your head, one can be on your right hand, and one can be on your left hand. Sometimes, one can be, you can keep your body to support it, so not necessarily you are hanging it on your hand, so you can keep it. So how long can you walk with that 50 liter of water? If the 50 liter of water is close to 40 kilos of weight, so how long can you walk? And is the question that each one of you need to think about. And then I'll add the reality that many women, few men are exception, few men also, but mostly done by women. Many women in the mornings or in the evenings walk kilometers of distance with that much of weight kept on your head and their head and their hands. So that is where this competition we had designed. So in the last World Water Week in Stockholm, it's going on now this year. So we had this competition of fetching 2 buckets of bringing 2 buckets of water for some 200 meters of distance or something like that. So in that we found that many of the people were not able to do that, but many women in our rural locations, even in some urban locations, are continuously doing that. So the second thought that you need to make about is, how is water conservation? Because women are into the difficulties of fetching water. They know exactly the value of water, which quite often in the patriarchal society, wherein men are having a lot of privileges and women are having lot of restrictions. So this restriction and privilege kind of push the in between the restrictions and in between the responsibilities. Women are well educated and women are well experienced about preserving natural resources much better. So I'll come, my next slide will further justify what I'm trying to talk. Many of you may get a feeling that I am also reinforcing that responsibility of women. I'm not doing that. What am I doing will come in the next slides. So water conservation at home, wastage of water at home who are responsible, we can definitely point out it will be mostly men folks or the male folks. And conservation of water happens because of mainly women and girls. And if you look at various leveraging equipments and inventions that has been happened, most of them currently, even in the scientific world and the technology world, space for women is very limited. Because of that, most of the inventions, most of the designs, including the places that you may be sitting at this point, including the mobile phone or the laptop screens that you are looking at, including the chairs that you are sitting or the benches that you are sitting, including the rooms that you are there, the toilet that you are using, and various other things are mainly, with exceptions, designed by men. So they only understand the kind of what you call the male understanding of the usage of things guide the inventions of the leverages. That may be the reason in the bringing of water, other than the water motor which pumps up, and the what you call the wheel that we use to fetch the water, and the rope and the bucket. The inventions in reducing the human what you call labor in bringing the water and maintaining the water is very limited. Even if they are there, they are designed, based on the requirements mainly of understood the way men understood it or male understood it. That is the way many of the things are designed. So if you look at the washing machines, they are wasting a lot of water because those people who invented the washing machine might not have thought about the wastage, because they always got it either on the running mode in their bathrooms or in their kitchens, or they really don't know the labor behind, or the value of water. So many other inventions, you can look at how things are done. So the water resource management also mean to make our technologies, to make our inventions, to make our leveraging kind of initiatives, all that friendly to conserving and preserving and securing the water and water sources. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. So that is what I'm going to talk about, how we are going to think about really understanding the value of water, and then to move towards protecting it, preserving it, conserving it, and keeping it for the future, being a very, very precious and very, very important resource for William Wordsworth called it as an elixir. So that is the kind of understanding that we need to keep. So are we trying, when I'm talking about women-led water resource management, what do I mean? Is it about reinforcing the traditional role that women are playing in bringing water, in conserving water, in maintaining household chores, in helping everyone to have access to water? Is it that we are talking about when we are talking about women-led what do you call water resource management? Not actually. If you are thinking so, I'm sorry. That's not I mean by way of women-led. So it is about handing over the control of water to women, and then assist them, to support them, and they lead, they decide, and they kind of because they know the value of it, and male folks often don't know the value of it. This is something that we are talking about, and women-led water resource management, when we are talking about, is about removing the patriarchy from water, and to become equals with women in protecting, in bringing, in preserving, in conserving, in securing, in whatever ways, to futuristically upholding the necessity of water. So this has several steps in optimizing the invaluable resource. One is about realizing the linkage of civilization and water. This is something historically we have to do. Whichever urban areas, whichever rural areas, wherever people would have made their bunch of either village or a town or whatever, one of the important things that they have made it, you can see that all the towns and all the cities across history are around water. So we are moving into an age, last month I was doing a talk for IMPRI that was about role of civil society organizations in mitigating climate change, wherein this was around WASH kind of organization, water sanitation hygiene organizations. So this is something we need to realize. The second part is, which we already have discussed about, the pain of fetching this water, and then realizing the inequalities around water access and addressing them. So that is something, at the village level or at the urban level, who is getting water in sufficient manner and who is not getting water in sufficient manner, and what is that minimum requirement, and who is completing that minimum requirement and who is not getting that minimum requirement. This is something that we need to really, really understand. It is not about reducing water usage doesn't mean that we also will reduce water usage of people living in slum who are already getting less than 20 liter per capita. So maybe for them, water conservation or water resource management means enhancing their access. But for the community which is having access, the community which is having better access to water resources or maximum access to water resources, they will have to reduce it. So this is where the balancing of utilization happens. That is where the realizing and addressing the inequalities of around water happens. And then comes assessing the water situation and the vulnerability in terms of availability, in terms of access, in terms of groundwater situation, in terms of surface water situation, the levels and quality and various things. So we need to really look at and understand the situation of water and the vulnerabilities around water. Then comes knowing how much we need and how much we have. So this is an estimation of, I've already told about this when it comes to the inequalities, but it is also important to each individual to assess and each communities to assess how much water we need and how much water we have. And then it comes to knowing ways to fill the deficit or preserving the surplus. Sometimes, in some places you can have surplus. So then the job is about not expending it fully, but about preserving it for the future. And whenever there is a deficit, then it's about how to fill the deficit, how to fill the gap comes as the question. Then that this is also something, there are many things I'm not telling about, how to do that. Probably I'm not telling here because that is something that you may need to further refer or read, because the 30-minute sessions will have its own limitations about speaking the how. And then the next one is about understanding water quality and health linkages. So whenever we are talking about water, we cannot escape speaking about health. So understanding what is the linkage between water quality or water safety and health. So we need to know that most of the diseases that we get, many of the diseases that we get, or a significant proportion of the diseases that humankind is getting are having their roots in either water quality or contamination of drinking water. So that also is water quality in a different manner. So, and then managing the water quality. So knowing the water quality is also very important for the kind of things that we are doing. And then it's about we waste a lot of water. So that the wastewater, how to manage the wastewater, how to recycle the wastewater, how to reuse the wastewater for those purposes, wherever those recycled and recycled water could be used. And then our water sources, it is about ensuring sustainability of water resources. The next thing, the valuing of water, would definitely necessarily require sustainability of water sources. It can be dug well, it can be a bore well, it can be surface water source, it can be a lake, it can be river, all that. I mean, all those very specific water sources, we need to think about what you call sustainability of the. So that would require a lot of activities. Again, all these, which I have written here in one line, has a lot of activities for fulfilling those things. So these are not very easy things to be done, but yeah. And then protecting our water bodies and preventing water contamination, those flowing to those water bodies. So these water bodies include groundwater sources. That also includes surface water sources. So both of them, wherever we have contamination happening, or we need to prevent that. So the drainages from the towns, or the nalas from the towns or cities, or the drainages from the villages, whether they are going directly into water bodies or mixing with the water bodies. So before that, how to treat them, and how to avoid mixing up of human waste or animal waste in the drainage, and how to get the storm water separate from the drainage water. There are several questions that we need to think about and understand when it comes to protecting water bodies and water contamination. And next comes the valuation process. Next comes harvesting water, the rainwater I'm talking about. So we are getting this flow of rainwater is one of the major sources of our water stock. Our water, it goes back to the atmosphere by way of the process of evaporation and all that. And this water, when rains happen, that is one of the purest forms of water that we get. So how much can we collect, without letting it go to, flow and go to, mix with the ocean? Some of that part, or a considerable part of that, could be collected. Some of them can be sent into the ground, water sources, and some of them can be collected for, some amount of them can be collected for future purposes. So that is something that we need to think about. And then finally, we need to anticipate various disasters related to water, and addressing the linkages of water with each of these disasters. That is also something that we need to do. And finally, our democratic processes. I mean, this is something that I have added from my side, which some of you may think that why the elections are important. So I'm saying that we should see at this point in the time of climate change and disasters, we should be in a position to clearly make our elections as Waterloos for those people who are not respecting water. So the leaders who should emerge from the democratic processes should be respecting water. That's what I'm trying to say. Waterloo was the war that the French and the specific war, the Denmark place, Waterloo, is known for the defeat of Napoleon's power. So here also I'm mentioning the power of those who disrespect water should be finished in our democratic processes, whosoever they are. So here is where again women-led becomes important. I think the moment our local bodies are mostly led by women. Currently, the reservations are only up to 50% in the rural local bodies and urban local bodies. But beyond that, we don't have even reservations for women. Many men sitting here may be upset about my open kind of advocacy for women-led. I mean, I'm not only talking about water resource management. I'm also talking about women-led democracy. So many of you may not be agreeing with me, but knowing how women are able to lead the processes, or seeing the history, seeing the kind of experiences around, I think I'm quite convinced about woman-led world rather than a male-led world. But of course, while I'm saying that, what I'm advocating for is the equality and harmony. It is not about domination. It's not about male domination replaced by female domination. It's about female-led, balanced kind of leadership that I'm talking about. So here, these are the key things that we need to have in terms of valuing and optimizing the invaluable elixir, what we call as water. Now, what does it mean, in terms of practice? So I can put a lot of theories about valuing the resource of water, etc. But when it comes to the practice of it, so I am putting up one experience of something we call as Jal Chowpal. But there are, at the end of it, I've written, I'm not here to market what WaterAid does for its, various programs. But I'm giving the example of WaterAid, initiative because I know them well. I have been part of it, notwithstanding the importance of various other initiatives that other organizations have started. There are many examples of similar nature, that you can look at. One is the Jalbandhu network in Orissa, that the Pani Panchayats, the Pani Samitis in Gujarat, and several such democratic platforms are available for water conservation. But what I am talking about, here is about how to center those around women. not to add to their responsibilities and burden, but to actually respecting them and to support them in the initiatives of reducing the water footprint, and also to futurizing and sustaining the kind of water resources and utilization. So here, one is, first step that we have done is about what you call participatory vulnerability assessment. So this is quite important for any disaster related issues, because unless we understand what is the situation, so we need to use a tool. So maybe a community level participatory assessment about what was the groundwater level or water table at one point in time and what is it now. Over the last 2-3 decades, what happened to the water table? How is the climate, felt climate is changing? What was the kind of green cover around? What all water bodies were present here, and currently what all are the water bodies available? If the traditional duck wells there are functional, or the water quality is good. So there are several things that you need to look at as part of participatory vulnerability assessment. And then in that process also, women has to play a major role. And then developing an understanding of participatory understanding of what is in that specific locality, the gender roles in water, bringing water, managing water, using water, all that, and then to make a balance, distributed balance between the gender roles, and then going into community level water budgeting and planning, wherein one has to really understand what is the kind of amount of requirement of water in that specific area for various purposes. There are tools for doing this. These tools and these notes are available in WaterAid websites if you want to look at them. So the specifically for from drinking to bathing and cleaning to washing to to agriculture to industry to animal husbandry, to various purposes, including mitigating fires, or to have a reserve during drinking water reserve during floods, or a drinking water reserve during droughts. You can plan lot many things under this budgeting, and then within that, like the financial budget happens, you need to have the revenue side and also the expenditure side. In similar way, where from the water is coming and where are you going to spend the water. That kind of a understanding needs to be made at the community level, and then look at the deficit, and then try to address how are you going to look at that deficit and address that deficit, and then go into joint water conservation, augmentation, regulation, safety initiatives, source sustainability initiative, harvesting initiative. All that will become part of the next step. And then it goes to convergence of various government schemes for taking the benefit, utilizing the benefit of those schemes for addressing the water related issues, and finally gaining support from the block level administration, district panchayats and district level administration in terms of towns and census towns and all that. Also the same way the urban development and housing and urban development departments at the state level, how to attain and augment the support from these departments. So this experience I'm talking about, we started this in Fatehpur district of Uttar Pradesh as a pilot experiment early, and then scaled up across Banda district. Close to a large number of panchayats and villages has done this. And then in the water quality affected areas of Gaya and Bihar, we tried this. And this process actually empowers people, makes them to own up and understand the water related requirements, water related the ways for addressing those requirements, augmenting the water availability and conserving water, preserving water, budgeting water. All that happens. So as I told, there are several other types of things also. So now I am about water sanitation linkages, and water safety is another area that we need to talk about. While so the one example is from Jharkhand, wherein the women leaders, the Jal Sayyas and women leaders are now helping to improve the toilet technologies over there. I don't know how many of you are aware that the toilet substructures can cause water contamination if they are not having horizontal and vertical safe distance from the the aquifers or water bodies. So that is something to look at. So when we did a study recently, WaterAid has done 2 studies. Both of the studies has very clearly said that close to 1/3 of our toilets can potentially create water contamination. The newly constructed, there are 120 million newly constructed toilets. Overall, we will have around 200 million toilets across India, put together the towns and the urban and rural areas. So within that 2000, we can definitely expect that close to 7,000 or so, 70 million toilets or so can potentially create water contamination because of their unsafe distance, either horizontal or vertical, from the water bodies. This is also something, terrain appropriatedness. Each terrain has its own vulnerabilities. Whether it is hilly terrain, it is a desert, it is a riverside flood-prone area, if it is a black soil area, if it is a hilly terrain, all these will have its own kind of vulnerabilities, and we need to think about whether any of our development initiatives are causing water contamination in those places. So we need to correct those erratic toilet technologies, and we need to do stormwater management in a way that it's not getting contaminated while going to the water body. We need to also think about treating water before they merge with water bodies, whether it is grey water, whether it is drainage systems, whether it is fecal sludge. The contamination of water bodies needs to be stopped, and then we need to use appropriate technologies for water purification and water quality, because the ROs, I don't know how many of you are aware, the technologies that we are mostly using and publicized by some of the very popular people's representatives and sports persons, etc., are actually causing a lot of water waste, and also the water wastage from RO quite often, wherever the TDS is high or contamination is high, the wastewater from the RO is carrying highest quantities of those contaminants in those small amount of water, and that is going back to our soil, which is going to add to the water quality problem that area is already suffering. So this is something that we need to understand while using technologies, by adopting technologies, how to also look at the technologies are also appropriate for addressing the water safety and security. So these all are issues that we need to educate people, we need to mobilize people, we need to bring people wherein women can play a major role, as I told in the Jal Chowpal experience. So within that, disaster preparedness and resilience around water. So we need to realize potential disasters for the locality and their connection to water. We need to plan and prevent mitigation measures. Prevention and mitigation measures. We need to plan safety measures and protected reservoirs for whenever a flood or another disaster is happening, including pandemic. Currently, we are into a disaster of a pandemic. So hygiene is important. So how do you preserve water for hygiene? It's a question that we are addressing now. And the forming groups and allocating responsibilities led by women, I need not to tell that. And preparing the communities for looking at these issues, and setting up institutional support for these groups so that they sustain their work. So this is how the process can go on. So I am now stopping at this point, for any questions and any specific discussion that you want to have. Over to you, Simi, now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Very interesting insights have been presented, and specifically when you started with the competition, I'm sure had we been in a in a physical mode, it would be very interesting for all the participants as well. I was particularly drawn to the image of that of those 2 women who were having pots of I don't know, filled water or just empty pots, and the whole area was drought ridden in one of your slides. So I can just understand how long they would have to travel. Yeah, this one, to at least fill even half a pot of water. And similarly, the irony is that you have excess of water in the image below. So rightly said that how much is available and how much do we need. Does this also bring into the picture then the question of equity? There are challenges in terms of climate change that is happening is going to be both water scarcity and water in excess. So and then the sufferings will really percolate to the women and children, and also the vulnerable, especially those who are elderly, and of course women who have to perform all these duties. So how would you say, or how would you point towards the need for equity, and how do we actually move towards that in this changed climatic scenario?
All right. This is something practically I can only talk about how the beginnings can be done, because this is an unexplored area, because we talk a lot about equity, but actually operationalizing equity in our mostly inequitable societal forms, only a couple of states in India has thought about how can you distribute the resources in an equitable manner. The fundamental resources I'm talking about, the basic resources that I'm talking about. In most other states, we don't have, whether it is land right, whether it is, where people live, and the most developed areas are, being captured by whichever kinds of elites of that specific locality, whether it is rural area, whether it is urban area. So the very important issue is to realize that we are in a deep rooted problem of inequality. Within that, many people are suffering and many people are living without much difficulty. So and not only and there are people, a very small percentage of people who are in the luxury of things. So there is a middle band which is having, which is meeting almost all their requirements, and there is a large lower band which is struggling to meet the ends, and there is a small, upper band which is in the luxury of everything. So we need to really think about, to talk about redistribution of the resources and all that, that can. That may not be easily digested even by many, the power distribution is such that even to speak these things in some of the current amendments is not easy. So within that, we need to do a participatory exercise. So that's what I was talking about, this 93 experience. In 93, when we started to do this in Bihar, in Rajasthan, in Uttar Pradesh, in Haryana, in many North Indian states, one of the things that we could find was that a sitting together and a very what you call warm and very graceful dialogue makes some of the things happen at the rural level easily. But in the urban level, it is even more difficult, because the division of the powerful and the powerless is having borders set up. The slums are, what you call, wire circled or whatever, and similarly you have gated colonies, etc. So in the urban area, to have a common dialogue and to have a kind of harmonic kind of understanding of distribution, redistribution is relatively difficult. But in the rural areas, this happens in a way that some people still may have their problems and they may try to stop it, but the majority of the people, what I have found is, the moment women start to speak in these meetings, and the moment women start to realize that the way to speak and the ways to win is slightly different from the routine ways that they do, they start to actually win the game. So this is something that I have continuously over the last 3 decades or whatever, I've been continuously seeing that this negotiation can happen at the rural level, and people start to understand, people start to see these people who are left out, who are marginalized, who are cut off from the mainstream, who are staying in on the other side of the river, who don't even have a bridge to come out, those kinds of people. So people start to talk about them. That is the beginning. Once they start to talk about them, once they are identified, slowly and steadily solutions are thought about, and at the community level there is nothing where you cannot have solutions. If the community sits together and thinks, solutions are coming out. So that is what is the experience, and women specifically can understand the voice of the other woman. Although the overall propaganda is different, but what I've seen is that once women start to realize the problems of other women, the self-help and the internal help measures start to initiate. And generally what has been seen is that when women initiate support measures for others, that becomes the community support measures. I would like to stop here, though there is a lot to speak.
Absolutely, sir. I totally agree. And especially since you are on this slide still. So, reinforcing of the traditional role vis-a-vis handing over control of the water resources. I think mass media and even the entertainment world has to also play a proactive role instead of, there are several songs and Bollywood and all regional songs which really reinforce this whole tradition of pani lene ke bahane aaja and all those things. They are this conventional role of women who are the primary, they are actually providing a service. I'm not sure whether these two women, how much water would they be using for themselves, rather it is for the entire family. So they are actually providing a service to the family. And also about Jal Sahiyas that you had mentioned, there is in several areas there is a long pending demand for at least a decent income, decent honorarium actually, and making their work regular, and having proper uniforms and government sponsored life and health insurance. So there is so much to ask, but still ask as in their genuine needs, and vis-a-vis the kind of things that we are expecting out of them to perform the work that we are expecting out of for them to perform. How can this be reconciled?
See, one thing is that our local bodies currently, whether they are gram panchayats or block panchayats or the district panchayats, are yet to understand and assume what are their powers. When we say government, quite often the picture of a gram panchayat or the block panchayat or the district panchayat is not even coming to our mind. So we are all reliable on the state or union government when it comes to government. So many of these things, what you said, if you are able to make the resolutions within a Gram Sabha for providing those women who are actually putting a lot of time that is important for their livelihood, and they are losing that time and putting it for the community, how to compensate them, how to support them, how to protect them, can be made as an important question within the Gram Sabhas itself. And the monies that are available within the realm of the panchayats or the block panchayats or the district panchayats, they have the powers to allocate those monies for or the other resources for the specific purposes. So it is about creating not necessarily if you make it as an employment, then the entire character of community leadership changes. So if you put it as a leadership role, and whosoever is putting livelihood, has to lose livelihood for a specific purposes, they will be supported under these schemes or these budgets or this money. If there is a resolution for that, so many of the things can be solved locally. Kerala has put up a lot of examples about how the 73rd and 74th amendment can make the local governments really function in a way. In many states like West Bengal also, you have the local doctors are now appointed by the panchayat. They are called the panchayat doctors. So nurses can be appointed. So why cannot we have a human resource for water? Not necessarily permanent employment, but whosoever is performing that role, how can they be compensated, supported? We can actually think about newer ways rather than the traditional ways.
Right, sir. So since you mentioned Kerala, there is a question asked by Murugan D. What are the states in India doing equitable distribution of water? So does Kerala stand first as a success story, and what are other successful examples?
See, when it comes to equitable distribution of water, I will not currently put Kerala into that. In equitable distribution of land, Kerala will definitely come in. But when it comes to water, Kerala has to yet reach there. Because, Kerala's traditional water support is, based on the household level dug wells. And many houses are there with very small amount of land with them. They may not be able to get a dug well, made in their land area. So they will have to either go for the pipe water connection, which is not universal yet in Kerala, or go to a public stand post. So for that purpose, I think Punjab's efforts, or the kind of things that some of the Orissa districts has done, or the urban Orissa has done recently. Urban Orissa, I don't know how many of you are aware that water has been within the policy. They have made water as a universal right of the people. So including for the urban poor, and 24-hour, portable water is flowing in some of the cities of Orissa, and they are making. They have a institution, utility institution that has been set up by the Urban and Housing Development Department. So I think when it comes to water, the states, the leading states are different. But of course, Kerala is doing, all panchayats are now starting to do under Jal Nidhi and various other programs. Jal Jeevan Mission is set to pick up there.
Yes, yes. So yes, one of our audience attendees, Kalyan Dash, mentions that it's in Puri. So yeah, thank you for sharing. And he has a question also about, can wash credit financing be introduced to ensure more suitable, to ensure that it is more suitable for women through the involvement of water self-help groups?
See that there should be something basic. We need to define this. It's not about putting all responsibility into communities and women. So what is the basic that the government should provide? What is the thing that over and above what is government is providing at the household level, the people are supposed to put up, or the communities are supposed to put up? So, the role of government and the role of the role of government and the role of what you call the local bodies and the role of people. If you define that, then in the third one comes the credit finances, or other kinds of things. Loans are one thing, but how can we find some kinds of self initiatives also is something that we need to think about, not only on returnable kind of loans. That can be one source of it. We need to also think about other ways of, like the NREGA scheme. If people are able to provide labor from their side, that should be seen as a resource and input. So some of those we need to see not only monetary things, but also in kind of things what people can contribute, and then make the economy a kind of a larger kind of pool, wherein credits comes in, people's labor comes in, government investment comes in, and what is seen as the basic is enhanced as the whole requirement.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. Very interesting, and we really learned a lot from you. I'm sure all the participants did learn as well, and we'll let you know if there are more questions that comes up, and we can take it from there. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and we wish you a very
thank
good
you so much. Thanks everyone who were there in the session. And if I am unable to answer some of the questions, I have given my email ID and all at the end of the slide. So you can reach out to me and I'll try to. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a good day. We are really grateful. Yes. So, Nishi, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to introduce you to the next speaker for the session, Mr. Tikender Singh Panwal, former Deputy Mayor, Shimla, Senior Visiting Fellow, IMPRI, New Delhi. Mr. Tikender Singh Panwal is former Deputy Mayor, Shimla. He is National Convener, NCU, National Coalition for Inclusive and Sustainable Urbanization, and Visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI. Being deputy mayor of Shimla, he was able to create a vision with the development plan that speaks about inclusive growth, greater planned social infrastructure, and making not just the city but the citizens resilient. A model for democratic decentralization was being developed by strengthening the ward sabhas and empowering the ward committees. He was also a member of the National Task Force in the country to review 74th Constitutional Amendment, which speaks about decentralized governance. Welcome, sir, to IMPRI #Web Policy Learning. We all look forward to learning from you, and over to you.
Okay. Hi, Raman. How are you? Good to see you. So, thank you for inviting me, but I'm really clueless. I mean, what do you want me to speak on, Nishi?
Sir, it is the role of women in water management.
My God, I think that Raman is the best person. I mean, why do you want me to speak on that?
So Mr. Raman has already set the stage. So it is up to you to take it forward as a policy maker and your perspectives. So yeah,
I think women play a very important role, and especially after the challenges that we are witnessing. I don't think that there's any second opinion. I mean, why it is important. But what I also want to share is that as a general understanding, and that happens to be, the push that we are now witnessing in most of the cities, and actually that's what I'll try to build my argument upon, and that is when we are creating these water utilities in the cities. So how do we consider water to be? Do we consider water to be as a right or as a need? Because having served the city for 5 years and experiencing all those challenges, you'll be shocked that the first file that came to our office. By the way, how much time do I have, Nishi?
30 minutes, and then we'll go on for question and answer.
That's more than enough. Yeah, so I think the first file that came to our office, in 2012-13 was to privatize water, and I mean, this was something beyond our comprehension, because for the simple reason that all through our lives we've fought on the streets, against rampant privatization of water utility, and then all of a sudden you find you in the process of privatizing water was like really a big challenge. So yeah, I think why I'm bringing this to the fact is for the simple reason that and that's why I pointed this out. Do we consider water as a need or a right? Because if we consider water as a need, then there are multiple players in the market, and the multiple players would actually do the needful to provide water. I mean, but if it's a right, then the right accrues from the state, the structure of the state. And unfortunately, what has happened in the last, say, 3 or 4 decades, is that there is a slow but a transformation from this important understanding, this important aspect. And the 2 examples that I would like to cite, and the first one happens to be, from Simla, and another one from Leh, where I was responsible into the kind of preparation of the vision document for Ladakh. Now, there are 2 aspects. The first aspect happens to be when I say water is a right or a need, because this transformation has taken place, as I told you, in the last couple of decades, and you will find that actually this also happens to be when I view this from the city perspective. Actually, how cities have transformed. One of the aspects happens to be that there's humongous amount of appropriation that is taking place in the cities. And this transformation, which we in political economy used to call a use value, like for example, water is a use value. So if water is a use value, then there is a certain kind of right that that exists in the society. And as a citizen, I am supposed to get that legitimate right vis-a-vis the state. Ursula Hughes actually has documented this very large transformation that has taken place from subjects and objects that were considered to be use value for the society and for individuals, getting transformed into exchange value. Now, Simi, what does that mean in simple terms? In simple terms, it means, take for example, health, take for example, education, water. Okay, so these were considered to be use value, or let me be a little more philosophical. Take for example the painting of Mona Lisa. I mean, it may be worth billions for you, but it may be worth nothing for me. So it has a certain kind of use value. You can't commoditize it, but it simultaneously it has a huge price attached to that. So there's certain things which has use value, which you cannot commoditize, but it's certain things which has an exchange value. So Ursula Hughes has been able to actually document it internationally and saying that in the last 3 decades, what has happened is there is a big transformation that has taken place. And this transformation is that certain objects which were considered to be use value for the society have been transformed into exchange value, which means their commoditization has taken place, which means that their this phenomenal wealth that has been appropriated, and in the process of capital accumulation. When I say capital accumulation, I mean, there's no problem with capital accumulation because it's a capitalist economy that we are living in. But these are certain areas which were considered to be, I won't say sacrosanct, but something that is quintessentially important for the people. Likewise, nature. So how do we consider nature to be? So in this period, we also find that there's phenomenal kind of intervention on natural assets, where the natural assets have also been commoditized. And it's not a big surprise, not a big shock for us, that the carbon emissions and when we talk about water, I think it is important for us to understand that water happens to be one of the important when we talk about water. I mean, we can't just miss out climate change. I mean, because that has a big impact on our water resources and on our water sources. So, and why I'm bringing out this time and again, this 3 decades transformation from use value to exchange value, it has not just happened in education. It has not just happened in water utilities, not just happened in health and others, but also into the nature and natural processes. And in the last 3 decades, if you see the carbon emissions, there's a 50% increase in carbon emissions than what has happened when we evolved on Earth, so just in the last 30 years. And the contribution of 20 companies, I can name those 20 companies, just 20 companies, is almost 33%. That is a big challenge, okay? So when we talk about climate change and we talk about sustainability, and we talk about sustainability and gender as an important element, I think these are certain areas which we cannot miss. Why? For the simple reason, because there is huge amount of equity that has existed. And in the last 3 decades, this inequity has further widened, not just amongst the rich and the poor, but also between different sections and different layers of the society. The marginalized and the women have been severely affected. Coming back to Ursula Hughes, why I'm saying Ursula Hughes? Because she has pointed out that the 20 big transnational corporations that were mainly into finance capital have actually switched over to services, to utilities, and that's why you find there's a large push for larger utilities, for big utilities, to enter cities and to have to gain on the utilities And that's why you'll find if you see most of the city development plans that we are witnessing in the cities, especially post JNNURM, post 1990s, I would say, these actually push for more capital intensive technologies. So there is a larger push from global capital to shift our conventional form, our conventional wisdom of the way we were running our cities, and water utility happens to be one of that important area. And that's why I said, is water a right or water a need? This phenomenal wealth that gets further accumulated, not just in the process of city development, city planning, but also in the privatization of water utility. And just take, for example, Delhi. Okay, we know Delhi Jal Board provides water, and the Delhi government provides water if it's less than 20,000 liters, free of cost to its citizens. But if it's more than that, then they charge. Fair enough. But I mean, have you ever got an idea that the kind of backdoor privatization that takes place through the process of purification of water through these ROs? Every year you buy, and then every year you have that operation and maintenance cost. There's huge kind of intervention in that form. Whereas if you see this the city's mandate, I mean, invariably all the cities and all the Delhi and all the Jal boards across the country, you will find it is a mandate to provide potable, adequate quantity water to its citizens. So if it is potable water, which is the mandate, then why we should have ROs or those fancy filters at home? This is actually privatization. This is abject privatization from a different angle. So, and you can understand. So the whole point, I mean, why I'm building this whole argument is, my whole point is that there is humongous amount of inequity that has actually existed in the last couple of years. And this inequity has further widened, and it has actually robbed our people from the assets that they used to have, and we have that Oxfam report which speaks volumes about this inequity, and states that 10% of the top and the gap between 10% of the top and bottom in rural India is 500 times, and in urban India it's 50,000 times. That's the kind of inequity, and all these processes actually have led to that. City planning, health, privatization of health, utilities, privatization of utilities, the kind of cost that one has to bear on mere living and livelihoods has actually led to such a situation. Now, if that is a situation, and there's a very interesting book by The Assorted City. I don't remember the author, but yeah, there's the Assorted City, I mean, Delhi-based author who's a planner. And
Suptindu Biswas, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Suptindu Biswas. Yeah, he speaks about the kind of I mean, what kind of a city we are living in, and that's why he's termed it the Assorted City, and he is actually focused on water on Delhi. Now, just tell me, Simi, I mean, why is it that you and I, we're living in Delhi, I was doing this master plan 2041 series, and you'll be surprised and shocked to know, I also learned this recently. Yeah? And when we talk about gender, I think this is an important element for us also to understand. Many of these so-called dirty nalas that we have in Delhi actually were water streams. And at one point of time, and it is not too long away, maybe 50 years or 60 years ago, people used to drink water from these water channels. And one of the villages that I visited is Nangal Thakra, where they said the neher that they use now, they can't use that water for drinking, but they used to drink that water just 3 decades, 4 decades ago. So you can easily understand what have we done actually, what have we planned. And probably Raman would have been the best person to tell you. I'm not sure, but in one of my shows, Raman and Suptendu, they pointed out that if we are able to tap 70% of the total rainfall in Delhi, then probably that would suffice almost 50 to 60% of water demand and need of Delhi citizens. But you know what we are doing? We are going to Himachal, my state, and constructing a dam in Renuka, where we are actually submerging prime forest land that will be submerged, and through the dam we'll get water for the Delhi residents to quench their thirst. These are not sustainable models. Actually, when we talk about sustainable models, I think we have to revisit this whole notion of sustainability, where we say the water, because of our very erudite city development strategies, we've converted our water channels into sewer nalas. Actually, these are sewer nalas, but we'll get water from 500 kilometers or 400 kilometers away, and that is going to suffice. I actually fail to understand how that would be a sustainable model. So yeah, I think so. I think when we speak about these processes, I think it is important that this onus lies on the people, and there's certain places where the slogan of remunicipalization is taking place. But there's another area, I think, which is very important, and that area happens to be when we talk about and why I'm really focused about the capital intensive technologies. So you will have planners which will go to Renuka Dam and get water, but you won't find this as process and part of the planning process, whereby we are able to rejuvenate our own resources in Delhi. So we will go, and this is what we witnessed in Leh, and this is what we have witnessed invariably in all the mountain towns. And one of the former chief secretaries of Himachal Pradesh, the other day, he told me, he said, "Do you know why our engineers do not design a water scheme which flows on gravity? Where water flows from top, and then you can utilize that water down below, though it's very cheap. I mean, you hardly have a capital cost, and then the operation and maintenance costs are really negligible." I said, "Sir, why? Tell me why." Because he said there is no operation and maintenance in that. No? So where would the engineers earn from if there is no operation and maintenance? And exactly this is what we are finding in Leh. In Ladakh, if you go to Leh, you will find not very far away, but 15 to 20 years ago, the water channel that flows in the Leh town, and that's that water people get from the glacier. Okay, it's the glacier fed water stream. People used to drink that water. Okay, but instead of actually rejuvenating those resources, instead of actually targeting those resources, the engineers have designed a scheme that will lift water from the Indus, and this scheme is going to cost, I think it's already 80% done, or maybe more than that, would cost around 80 crores. And the operation and maintenance cost per annum would be somewhere around 5 to 6 crores. Whereas the entire cost for the gravity flow of water, if they had channelized it properly, treated it properly, would not have costed them more than 5 to 7 crores. Actually, that is, so just imagine, Simi, and what is it that we're playing? And that cost will transfer on to the people and onto our population, and saying, look, NRW, non-revenue water, not realizing that actually it is the design, it is the planning process, which has led to our faulty methods, and which are completely unsustainable. Having said that, I think what is important, I mean, coming back to the whole question of gender, as we are talking about. And I think it's already we know. I mean, we know what our gender index is, and where we have already reached. So I don't think that I have to repeat all that. But having said that, I think it is important then when we talk about water sustainability methods, I think it is also important that we work out the cost of producing water, because at the end of the day, if we are unable to provide adequate quantity of water, and at the end of the day, if you are able to provide potable water, then the largest sufferer happens to be the women, for the simple reason because it is the women who would hold back and fetch water, or maybe who would in the towns and cities lose their their work. So I think it is it is imperative when we are talking about cities and we're talking about design, that the water utility and water management is done in such a manner where it's not just the quantity that we are focusing on, but also the potability of water, which is actually quintessential for the sustainability of water utilities. I think that is all, Simi, I would like to state here, and not going further, because and if there are questions, probably I'll be pretty happy to take them. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. Your insights are very, very important, and it really opens a lot of ideas and a lot of questions. In fact, it can all be rhetorics, that why things are like this, but still we have to live with it. For example, you mentioned about the changed climate scenario, and I would like to begin with that only. Just yesterday we had the news that by the end of this century, Kolkata is going to witness 4.5 degrees Celsius rise in the temperature. So we can only imagine what will be the situation in terms of water availability and water security, basically, accessibility and affordability. And when you rightly pointed out, when we talk about water security, water insecurity, it is the women who are who bear the brunt of this kind of an insecurity. Plus, drawing our attention towards Chennai, it's already the water has already almost finished. It's near to nil. So again, what will happen? You mentioned this question, what is going to happen? So, sir, water riots, what are your thoughts about this? Are we, is it just imminent? Is it just knocking at the door?
No, Simi, no. I think deliberately I didn't mention that, because working on to the solutions, I think what we desperately require is, and that's why I provocatively said that, this is a completely unsustainable model that you go to Renuka and get water for Delhi. Actually, what we desperately require is to create and some of the conventional wisdoms. I mean, we have to go back to that. Not that all that was past was bad. I don't buy that argument. Now, take for example Gurgaon. Okay, and that's why I said when we looked at the master plan Delhi, unfortunately the master plan doesn't speak about rejuvenating all those water bodies. And actually these water bodies in Delhi used to be what in North India we call Shamlat Bhumi. Shamlat is village common land. Okay, that's what Shamlat is called. And in common parlance it's called Johor. So Johor is where you have water. Okay, so you create that space so that you have enough water and you store that water. And from different channels, water actually gets stored. Actually, we will have to work for such solutions everywhere. I'm telling you, everywhere you have one, and that's why Suptendu Biswas, I said, the assorted city. You have such places where either those places have been usurped for real estate development, or have been converted into the land use change. I think I should have mentioned that. Actually, one of the challenges for climate change also happens. There are three challenges, let me just tell you, because I didn't want to be that generic in the, so carbon emission happens to be one, I already mentioned. So therefore, we'll have to understand how we change our lifestyle and how we actually move from mere reductionism to actually something more on that. The second happens to be the kind of pollution that we witness, and the third is land use change. That's something very, of course, loss to biodiversity is another what the UN is focusing upon. But this land use change is something very blatant that we are witnessing. And water happens to be one of the important areas that gets severely affected with land use change. Now, why I'm saying so, because not just master plan to 2041 in Delhi, but also if you go to Gurgaon, there were, I think, more than 40 talabs, what they call talab or ponds. Now, all those talabs are gone. So, even if you are able to rejuvenate that, if you are able to create those spaces once again. Maybe you just dig the field and then create those talabs once again. Take for example, Gorakhpur is another area in Uttar Pradesh where actually people have come forward for protecting their which is considered to be a town of such ponds. That is something what will be required. And tell me, Simi, it's just silly. Water from Simla or Renuka is pure, or I would say more pure than water that you get in Delhi. This is nonsense. Okay, so the point is that we have actually destructured our conventional structures that we had, and I think that is what we need to revisit. Else we cannot go back, because tomorrow what's going to happen, because that's my state. Someday when I find a contradiction brewing in between Delhi and Himachal, then I will cut your line and I will ensure that water doesn't reach. I remember this happening in one of the cities where the mayor was also BJP and the local MLA was also BJP in Uttar Pradesh. I don't remember the city because I went there for the city disaster mitigation plan. I was instrumental in preparing that plan. Varanasi or something. I don't remember the city exactly. But the MLS told the mayor very categorically. He said, "You stop throwing this garbage on because the garbage goes to the peripheral regions, and interestingly, the periphery happens to be beyond the city spaces." And he said, "We will block your trucks. We will not allow those trucks to come to our land because it's really stinking the way your garbage is." So I can do it in Renuka. And I said, "No, I won't allow you to get that water because I need first." So yeah, what you're saying is yes, definitely. So riots can't just be in Delhi, but it can happen. So the way that can happen, to counter such an eventuality is to think now. And to think now means to actually rejuvenate our resources, to get back the conventional wisdom, to actually construct such talabs, or maybe what in modern parlance we call rainwater harvesting. Actually, this is the natural rainwater harvesting that we had, and also in the mountains, like we were able to do. That's what I wanted to point out. That we were able to actually secure and rejuvenate some 25 of our water resources. Those water resources which were either abandoned, which were either polluted, we went back, worked on step 1, step 2, step 3, and now all those water resources are working. If you see in small water streams. And actually, this is, of course, we learned from the British because that's how they created the water catchment area. So I think there has to be a holistic approach, and that holistic approach has to be mainstreamed into the process of city planning. You can't expect Delhi 2041 master plan speaking only about land pooling area, and in that land pooling you pool in your water talabs also. Then there's a disaster in the offing. I'm telling you, this is a big disaster that's going to come up. And of course, and I told you, I don't need to substantiate that women would be the largest sufferers.
Sure, thank you, sir. So in the beginning of your talk, you had mentioned about the RO systems, and also how we are getting our so-called mineralized water and all those pure water at our home because of different promoters of such usage. In fact, Mr. V.R. Raman had also alluded to it in his presentation. On the other hand, you also mentioned that why should we be doing this at our individual capacities? And especially in the US and other developed countries, you just drink water out of the tap. The tap water is as pure as we can get here in terms of water purifiers. So do you think that this kind of the operations and management of purifying water right at the source from wherever we are getting, the government is supplying, should it have been there, or what are the challenges that this is not being made possible in India, especially in places like Delhi and of course other places also, that we are not that we have to invest, each family or each household has to invest money, huge amounts of money, as you rightly pointed out, and annual maintenance and all those things are there. So what is stopping them, and are the governments backsliding from their duties of providing this very invaluable service?
Simi, that's why I give that provocative statement. No, is water a right or a need? See, if it's a need, then Bisleri is always there. No, yeah. Then you have Bisleris and which are, I mean, all those. By the way, you're post 90s born or pre 90s, Simi?
Pre.
Well, then you may be having an idea, because earlier when you used to travel, I mean, heavens never fell even when we were like in the 80s, okay? And when we used to travel in a train, then we used to get out of the train, fill our water containers at the station, drink water and move on. Didn't we do that? So we have tried that, no? But all of a sudden, why this push and rush post 90s? That's why I said post 90s, for Bisleri, and because definitely there's a cue to the water quality. I'll address that a little later. But at the same time, there is also a push from these large capital-intensive technological companies who say, look, this is the way. For example, RO companies. Okay, I just wrote an article. I wrote an article long ago, but where I pointed out that just the operation and maintenance of ROs in Delhi is around 2,000 crore business, just operation. Forget about the capital. It's huge business for them. And it's huge business for them also means that, they desperately, deliberately want us to they'll hammer us down. Look, your water is not good, you'll die. Did we die in 80s? I mean, we've been drinking that water all through our lives. But all of a sudden, what is it that has happened? That's the first thing. Second thing I said, it's not that we can't do it. And this is what we learned in Simla. And I want to, reiterate it time and again. The beauty, of course, the utility that we created is now a model for the World Bank, and not the way we wanted to do it, but still, it is definitely. And one of the reasons that we were able to build that utility is that every alternate year before us, there was this epidemic of hepatitis B. People used to get infected, and 20, 30 used to die every alternate year, and maybe 3,000, 4,000 used to get infected in Simla, despite the fact that we get one of the best forms of water from the roots of citrus and oak, which is considered to be very good quality water. Why was this happening? This was happening because, in one of the water streams called Ashwini Khad, 5 kilometers upstream, a sewage treatment plant was constructed by some of the very good engineers. And actually, it was raw sewer that was flowing in that water treatment plant. And every alternate year, now why every alternate year? Because then we checked the data from the meteorological department. That is the period when we had less rainfall in the winters. So when you had less rainfall, the concentration of sewer was higher, and that's how people got infected. So this was happening since 1995, I'm telling you. We got elected in 2012. So once it happened when we were there in office, when I was there part of the city government team, and the water was being supplied. Now there was duality in the system, supplied by the city government, a parastatal called the IPH, Irrigation Public Health Department. We told the government that, look, this is your water. It's infected, it's contaminated. You are providing us with such water and our people are dying. They said, no, how can you mistrust or doubt a government agency? Actually, it is contamination at your end, at not at the source, but at the end of the delivery. We said, okay, fine. Then we got the NIV Pune, National Institute of Virology. And just try to understand the nuances of the structural aspect and the governance that happens. And the NIV Pune was able to decode the genome of the virus. And they said, the virus that is found in human blood samples, water sample, and sewage is the same. Okay, so we went back to the government. We said, no, this shit is your business. Either you take the entire system or don't leave it that you produce water and we distribute. Either we produce water and we distribute. This duality should not exist. The government said, you take it. We took this system, created a utility called, and we integrated the entire system, by the way, right from every drop of water that we lifted. So it was called Greater Shimla Water Supply and Sewerage Circle. The one was that we wanted adequate quantity, and second was potability, because people were dying of that water. No? Simi, can you believe it's been, what, 6 years now? Not a single case of hepatitis has been reported. Because the kind of interventions and the kind of onus responsibility that we built, of course, we abandoned one of the sources because we didn't want to lift sewer to and to make it drinkable for our people. But the beauty is now you don't want those filters. You just drink tap water. So whosoever was coming to my office, I drank that water all through. And whenever, someone visited my office, I said, hey, we don't use RO, we use the tap water. You go to Simla and the tap water is potable. I stand as a counter guarantee. And why? Because the tests are done not in any private lab or, it's done by the medical college microbiology department every day. And you can see the tests. So, that transparency question is also there. Have I ever seen those tests being done by Delhi Jal Board or a laboratory? Or is it just an eyewash? So, those nuances, those structures have to be worked out. Responsibility, and then taking that responsibility, where is transparency? It's really ridiculous to believe that we can't even provide adequate quantity and quality water to our citizens. It's ridiculous, let me tell you. But we can, at the same time, when we were doing with these episodes with Suptendu, can you believe in one part of Delhi, we are providing water, not even 50 LPCD. That's what the 135 LPCD is the requirement. No? Probably in mountains we have less. You know why? Because here in Delhi, even I have to take a bath twice a day. In Simla, we used to take once a week, or maybe twice a week, because it's cold. You don't have to take a bath every day, no? So our water requirement was very less. But even if it is 135 LPCD, in certain parts of Delhi, you get 50 LPCD. But you go to cantonment Delhi, it's 600 LPCD. Can you believe that? What is this? So, the whole question of equity in water. And of course, Latvian Delhi is also somewhere around 300 LPCD. That's what we calculated. The point is, actually, what I'm trying to build is that it is not impossible. We require structures, and in the process of those structures, we require more transparency, greater responsibility, and maybe some proactive actions. And then we can get, we have to drink water from the tap. Why should we not?
Sure. So there is a question from your part of the region where you have spoken about by Rohit Parashar. Sir, I'll just read it out to you. सर, मैं जानना चाहता हूँ कि हिमाचल के स्पीति रीजन में जहाँ लोगों के पास न तो पीने और न ही तो सिंचाई के लिए लिफ्ट स्कीम है, इस क्षेत्र के लोग पूरी तरह से ग्लेशियर के पानी के ऊपर निर्भर रहते हैं, क्योंकि अब इन क्षेत्रों में बर्फबारी की कमी हो रही है, तो यहाँ खेती के लिए पानी मिलना तो दूर, पीने के लिए भी दिक्कत है। ऐसे में इन क्षेत्रों में क्या करने की जरूरत है ताकि लोगों को पीने के साथ खेती के लिए भी पानी उपलब्ध हो सके?
ये तो अपने बस से बाहर है साहब। मतलब ये तो मिटिगेशन स्ट्रेटजीज की बात है, ये तो पूरा विश्व बदलने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि क्लाइमेट चेंज ये है एक्चुअली असली इम्पैक्ट जो इन्होंने कहा। असल में हम देख रहे हैं इसको ना, जो हम सिर्फ महसूस नहीं कर रहे, क्योंकि दिल्ली में तो पानी आ रहा है ना। अरे रेणुका नहीं आएगा तो टेहरी से ले आएंगे, हमारा क्या है, क्योंकि हम तो राष्ट्र की धरोहर हैं दिल्ली में बैठे। लेकिन वो जो बात बोल रहे हैं बिल्कुल सही बात बोल रहे हैं। तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि ये है, लेकिन और इसमें कोई सोल्यूशन तो है ही नहीं। मतलब आप क्या बोलेंगे, आप कितना वाटर सिक्वेस्ट्रेशन की अगर हम बात करें, तो अगर आपकी स्नो लाइन ही रिसीड कर रही है, एक्चुअली हो क्या रहा है, द स्नो लाइन इज रिसीडिंग। हर साल स्नो जो है वो सिकुड़ती जा रही है, और उसका बड़ा कारण है क्योंकि इनका पूरा पानी, जैसे हमने कहा, वो ग्लेशियर का पानी है, वो बरसात का पानी नहीं है। और वो ग्लेशियर अगर पिघल रहे हैं तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि उसका एक बहुत बड़ा असर वहाँ के जीवन यापन पे पड़ने वाला है। और फिलहाल ये कर सकते हैं कि कम से कम पीने के लिए जब उसमें पानी है तो बड़े स्टोरेज कर सकते हैं, जैसा हमने बहुत सारी जगह पे देखा है, ग्रामीण हिमाचल में और खासकर ठियोग के क्षेत्र में मैंने देखा है कि वहां पर बहुत बड़े बड़े टैंक्स बना के रखे हैं उन्होंने, जो मतलब और वो इसमें है हमारा रोजगार गारंटी एक्ट में बने हैं लोगों के, तो सामूहिक लेबर से वो बन सकते हैं। तो कम से कम वो थोड़ा सा सहारा वहां पर हो सकता है। लेकिन ये स्पीति के कौन से रीजन में मैं नहीं जानता, कि अभी वहां पर इतना क्राइसिस तो नहीं है कि वहां, क्योंकि अभी भी वहां पर बहुत सारा जो सिंचाई है वो उसी तरह से होती है। मतलब इसको कंडा बोलते हैं एक्चुअली वहाँ लोकल पार्लेंस में। कंडा इज अ फ्लैट लैंड ऑन द माउंटेन टॉप। सो वहां से वो ग्लेशियर से पानी को लाते हैं। और लेकिन ये चैलेंज है एक्चुअली, इसका कोई सोल्यूशन नहीं है फ्रैंकली स्पीकिंग। ये तो लार्जर अडेप्टेशन नहीं है, तो मिटिगेशन स्ट्रैटेजी का पार्ट है। और लेट्स होप कि हम तेजी से उसको करें, नहीं तो ये सिर्फ असर जो बोलते हैं ना कोस्टल रीजन में पड़ेगा, ये सिर्फ कोस्टल में नहीं है, सिर्फ ये दिख रहा है पहाड़ पे भी कैसा असर इसका पड़ रहा है। कोस्टल तो डूबेंगे लेकिन हम भी बचेंगे नहीं, जो पहाड़ के ऊपर है उनका पूरा ग्लेशियर खत्म होने का मतलब ये है कि पूरा इकोसिस्टम खत्म होना, क्योंकि उसी से ही वहां नमी रहती है, उसी ग्लेशियर से। उसी ग्लेशियर की वजह से जैसे वो पानी आता है तो सेब होते हैं। आई डोंट नो स्पीति में सेब लगाते हैं ये लोग के नहीं, लेकिन वहाँ आलू वगैरह ये लोग लगाते हैं। लेकिन थोड़ा आप किन्नौर की तरफ आ जाओ तो किन्नौर में बहुत अच्छे सेब, इनफैक्ट नाको चांगो जो दो गांव है, वो वन ऑफ द फाइनेस्ट एप्पल्स दैट वी गेट इन द कंट्री हैपेंस टू बी coming from these two villages, Nako and Chango. So yeah, definitely we can easily we can understand कि क्या असर पड़ रहा है।
Yeah, certainly the implications are going to be very severe, and yes,
and just imagine इसका असर महिलाओं पे क्या पड़ रहा है।
yeah, that's what, yeah,
क्योंकि वहां पर तो हमारे मतलब हर काम स्पीति में मतलब महिला के आधार पर ही उस पे होता है। उसका मतलब एग्रीकल्चर, उसकी एनिमल हस्बेंड्री, उसका खाना बनाने से लेकर जो हमारे लोकल दारू बनाते हैं, ये सब काम महिलाओं के हाथ से होता है। तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि क्या असर उस पर पड़ेगा यार।
great. Thank you, sir. So wonderful chatting with you and interacting with you. Wonderful points that you have raised. So much to think about, and it feels that we all really need to roll up our sleeves and get into that adaptation and mitigation mode. Otherwise, it's just knocking at our doors.
Yeah,
so,
is Arjun back in Delhi or still out?
He's still out.
Okay, fine. Great.
So thank you so much, sir, and thank you for your time. So in fact, your views really provide the best way to segue into our next speaker, Miss Urvashi Prasad. Welcome, ma'am, and I would welcome, ma'am. So I would like to invite Nishi to introduce ma'am. Thank you, Tikender, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. And I would like to introduce you to the next speaker for the session, Ms. Urvashi Prasad, Director, Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, NIDM IMPRI. Ms. Urvashi Prasad is currently working as Director at Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, NIDM IMPRI, and has been part of the core team supporting the work of the Government of India's Group 1 for managing the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. She has extensive experience in health, nutrition, sanitation, gender, and public policy. She has been the member of the task force for overseeing the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals in India and co-authored India's first voluntary national review presented at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development Goals in 2017. With over 100 publications in leading national and international newspapers, journals, and digital platforms. She has been the member of the World Economic Forum's Expert Network and an alumnus of the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers community. Ms. Urvashi completed BSc in Life Sciences Genetics from University of Birmingham, UK, followed by an MPhil in Bioscience Enterprise from University of Cambridge and an MSc in Public Health from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She has worked as a consultant for the World Health Organization and with the Partnership for Child Development, Imperial College London. She is also on the governing board of Partnership for TB Care and Control, India's largest TB network. She is a World Economic Forum Global Shaper. Welcome, ma'am, to IMPRI #Web Policy Learning. We all look forward to learning from you, and over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, that's a very generous introduction. I really did not need to say so much, but yeah, thank you for having me here once again. It's always a pleasure to participate in IMPRI discussions. So I think what I will just touch upon, because it's already been a 3-day training, and I think you've already had some very, very distinguished speakers on this topic. So I don't know if I will be adding very much, sort of new insight, but I did want to perhaps reinforce some of the points that would have already been made, and from my own experience, and also a little bit from the policy perspective, how we need to look at this issue. So I think, from my experience, and I've previously worked prior to coming to NITI Aayog, I have worked in the development sector extensively. And most of my work was actually focused in urban slums, so the urban poor settlements. And I think one of the biggest, learnings of my time and my work there was very clearly the extensive role that local communities play, and the very, very important role that they play. Whether it's a program in water sanitation that we were implementing, or in any other area, really, ensuring the involvement of local communities, and actually more than involvement, I think the word is really ownership, and ownership from the outset, ownership at every level. Because especially when we are going into a community as development partners, or even a government which is implementing a program, we can have a certain sense, almost a certain arrogance, that we know the solutions, we know what would work, we know what is best for people. But that is often not the case. It is often people themselves who, if adequately empowered, who, if given an adequate voice, and of course these are big challenges, and I'll just come to that in a minute, to ensure that everyone actually has that voice. But if those conditions are met, then actually people sometimes come up, and often actually come up with the best solutions for their own challenges. So this is no different when we are talking of water or sanitation related issues also. Especially in a country like India, this becomes even more important, because there is no one size fits all. We know we are a very, very diverse country. Even states are like countries in India, actually. Even districts are way too big. And frankly, we have to, for any intervention or program, really think of what's happening at the block level, and even go more decentralized and look at the villages. So given this structure of India, the ownership and engagement of the local communities from the very outset in any sort of planning or design or implementation, or then more importantly, the subsequent monitoring, because that is where I feel that we actually really end up lacking to a great extent. We can implement, we can get things on ground. We have over the years even learned to do it at scale in many, many contexts. But the challenge for us is to sustain those interventions, to ensure that they continue to have impact. And local communities play, I think, in that particular context, an even more important role, because they are the ones who can give us the feedback, whether a particular program or an intervention is actually working or not working, or it stops working after a certain period of time. So I, am a very, very strong believer and advocate for community ownership not just involvement. I think involvement is sometimes a little bit of a weaker, terminology, and it sort of suggests that yes, we might take the views of the local community, but I think it's much more important to give them that ownership, give them that sort of confidence that they are the ones who are actually designing the solutions for their own unique challenges. And they are the best positioned to do that because they are living those challenges every single day. Which somebody coming in from the outside, which, as I said, it could be a development partner, it could be a government stakeholder, is never going to be as well positioned as the communities themselves. So I think that is really very, very critical. Now, of course, within that context, women do play a very, very important role. I think we have a lot of evidence which shows that women tend to be more concerned about a lot of these issues which relate to the well-being of their families, of their local communities. We've seen this in health, we've seen this education. Similarly, water is another area which very directly impacts the everyday life of a family, of a community. So these are issues that often women tend to be disproportionately concerned about. Women tend to also give a lot of importance to. If they are involved and if they are engaged in a very strong manner, again, the level of outcomes that we can achieve can be much, much better. And there is a lot of scientific evidence which actually shows that. And also the distribution of resources at the local level to these areas can be much better if we actually have women involved and women have a say. Now, of course, that is challenging and that is very, very inequitable across the country. There are parts of the country where women do have a stronger voice, and the local women's groups, the self-help groups, the other community level structures are actually very powerful and actually have a big say in what happens in those communities. But there are other parts of the country where women do not have as much of a say. They are simply not in a position where their views are heard adequately, or they are given the due importance that they should. So I think that is where, when we think about governments, we think about development partners, that is really where our role comes in. It is not, to say that we know the solutions, but it is actually to say, how can we empower these local communities? How can we empower women specifically, equip them with the right enabling tools so that they can actually get their voice across, they can get their solutions across. And I think that is the role that we need to play. More than, as I said, when we look at it from the outside, we're often very solution oriented. We want to jump to a solution. We want to offer a solution quickly. But I think much more than that, our role should be in enabling and empowering the knowledge that already exists in the local community, and making sure that all those voices are heard. And there are systems and structures for doing that. We have community level structures like SHGs, which work very well, again, in certain parts of the country. But in other parts of the country, like the urban areas where I worked in, a lot of the informal settlement areas I worked in, or the slum areas, it was sometimes very difficult to form groups like these because they were largely migratory populations. People didn't trust each other as much. People didn't know each other as much. You could be in a situation where your neighbor is there for a few weeks in a year living next to you, but then might go back to their village. Somebody else might come. So it's quite different in certain contexts. It's not the same as it might work in a particular village with, the Gram Panchayat and, the other sort of structures we have. So of course, the urban-rural distinction also becomes very, very important here. And we need to have the right kinds of tools and strategies which work in these different contexts, given the local community dynamics and given the local positioning of women in those communities. So I think that is really where I feel that, whether we are governments or we are thinking of it from a policy point of view or development partners, that is really the sort of role that we should be playing here, is really of an enabler, is of providing the right set of tools to the local communities, empowering them, making sure that those voices are consistently heard. And there is an equal platform for all voices to be heard, because inherently there's a lot of inequities related to, caste or religion or various other factors that we know are all at play. So I think that's a massive and complex challenge to address. But frankly, that is really where a lot of our focus has to be. If we want to ensure that some of these massive challenges, water resources, we know this in our country is already a big challenge, and in the months and years to come, this is something which could become even more problematic. And certainly a lot of the data and the analysis and the statistics do suggest that. So if we are to find, sustainable, localized solutions to these very seemingly intractable and massive challenges, we need to take up this hard work of enabling and empowering those communities, giving them those right tools, giving them the voice that they have, but making sure that they are able to express it in a way that is heard by one and all. And here, I think the local government structures also play a very important role. We at NITI Aayog in the policy level, we're thinking a lot about, how do we think of decentralization? How do we think of community ownership? And the local governments have a very big role to play. Because the communities, they can be empowered, they can be organized, they can have a voice. But if they don't have a responsive set of mechanisms at the other end to really address their concerns or to address the local challenges, then it's not going to work. So we need both sides of the equation to be really working if the overall concept is to be successful. And that is what we are trying to look at now, is that, how do we look at local governments? How do we look at the institutional mechanisms that we can have to make sure that where there is community ownership, where there is community engagement, it is effectively channelized into the work that the local government is doing, into the programs, the policies that are being designed, implemented, and as I said, most importantly, the monitoring, the feedback that we are getting, the course corrections that we need to make based on that feedback. Because it's no use, a local community doing the hard work, doing the monitoring, coming back to us and saying, okay, these water connections are not working, or this particular aspect of this project is not functioning, and we don't have the adequate response mechanisms, which is actually what happens in a lot of places across the country. So again, this is a very massive issue. It's one of governance. It's one of getting those institutional mechanisms to work. In theory, we've had a lot of this in place. We've had a lot of committees at local levels. We've had a lot of structures. But there's really a need to seriously relook at what's working, what's not working, to share good practices across local governments, across states. And that is again something that as NITI Aayog we're well positioned to do. So we're trying to look at some of those aspects because it constantly is evolving. It is some of these are inherent in our policy design, they are inherent in our governance structures, but they are not necessarily being constantly modified, or we're not seeing that constant evolution in response to what's happening out there, what's happening in communities, the community dynamics, and which itself are always, fast evolving, especially, as I said, in the urban context. We can see a lot of, changes happening very quickly in a community. So how do we make sure that our policy, our governance is also responsive to this? That is the other side of the equation, which is equally critical. So I think those, are just some of the points that I wanted to highlight from my experience and also from the policy perspective. As I said, I think none of this would be new. You would have already heard from so many experts, but I think these are just some critical aspects that, at least in my work and also in my work now here at NITI Aayog, I do come across. So just wanted to highlight some of these. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, it is very heartening to know that the NITI Aayog is undertaking such efforts. Ma'am, there are a few questions. First is about the much focus that the government has put on the Jal Jeevan mission, and millions of tap water connections are being given. The success is considered to be in the tune of the toilet and the housing mission. How in going ahead with this Har Ghar Nal Yojana, how will we focus on the quality and service level benchmarking in both rural and urban areas? Also taking in view that women's leadership is effectively addressed in this policy.
Yeah, so I think that's, those are some of the issues I was alluding to when I said that, it's one thing to provide a service, but then to make sure that it continues to function, it delivers the level of quality. And that is also the challenge, which is an ongoing one on the sanitation side. It's not that, we're done with our work there, because even if somebody has got that individual household toilet, the main effort really lies in making sure it continues to be functional as well as continues to be used. Because in many cases, we see that sometimes even the usage drops off, the functionality certainly drops off in many cases. So I think it's a similar challenge for us when it comes to water and these water connections. Of course, the very first step is coverage, because that itself we have been lacking over years now in terms of very inequitable coverage. So that is obviously, I think, the very first priority, and that is what this program is trying to address. But eventually, once we have these connections and we have a high level of coverage, obviously the most important aspect is sustaining the quality and maintaining that and making those course corrections. So now, of course, this is a complex issue because this is the states are involved, the local governments are involved. So this plays out at every level of the government. It's not just the central government, but much more importantly, the states and the sub-state governments. And that is really where the structures that I was talking about, the feedback mechanisms, both formal and informal, from the local communities, as well as, of course, having independent agencies which can come and look at these, but those might be much more on a one-off sort of survey basis that happens periodically. I think what is much more important is the constant and continuous feedback loops that come in. So I think that is something that we're trying to build in, because one thing is to be collecting data from the government side, which of course we need to do, and we are looking at holistically the data architecture, the whole data systems in the country. That is again something that we are doing. We're actually building out a big data platform which will precisely collect information on metrics from all these kind of flagship schemes and analyze and see where the gaps are. But equally important, I think, is from the community side to make sure that those inputs, that feedback, which could be qualitative, is equally taken on board, because just having those numbers really reflects probably only half the picture or even less. So I think that is where our hard work is, and that's where our challenge also is, because as I said, it's not just about one government or one ministry. This is something which needs a whole of government approach. It needs the center, the states, and then the sub-state level governments to be working. So it is very complex. There are obviously challenges, but that is something that we're at least trying to work towards, to see how can we put in place these mechanisms and also share across states what is working. Because in some states, they have a good experience. They have certain mechanisms that have worked for them in the past. So how do we share that? How do we take that across states, across urban local bodies, across panchayats? That is something that we're really trying to play a role in here.
Yeah, sure. So that feedback thing that you just mentioned, it is actually very important in order to really create that structural change and structural reforms that the governments have over the period of time has been trying to bring about, that actually leads to the efficiency of the system. And this is really very, very important. So thank you for pointing that out, ma'am. Would you like to share your views on your policy recommendations or policy perspectives on water pricing for different uses of water? Anything that would be in model of the developed countries or any other countries which you feel are can be compared to that of India, and then that can be really emulated by the local governments or the state governments?
Yeah, I have to say I'm not really an expert or specifically on this aspect. So there's, I wouldn't be able to go into a lot of depth, but I think, yes, we have those international models, but I think our context, and just given, how diverse our context is, That's what I have seen when, I used to work on these water sanitation projects across different cities, that, even within cities, there was vast differences, even between different slums that we were looking at, whether it was the socio-economic composition, the income levels. I mean, it was so very, very diverse. That I think this is something that more than international, I think it's important that we look across, within India, we look at across, as I said, states, but go at a much more granular level, because I think at state level, we do manage to do a lot of this comparison or manage to do a lot of this analysis, but going at a much more granular level, and sort of then looking at what is working, what is not working, what are the challenges that the local communities are having. I think that is where we need to push. Because yes, there is a temptation to look at the international examples, and we should, by all means. It's not to say that we can't learn from them, but I think we sometimes don't learn adequately from our own context and our own experiences. And I think that is something which we are trying to really push on all these aspects, whatever the different aspects might be, to see how do we learn from each other within our context, or within a context which is comparable, or at least relatively similar. So I think that is something, of course, this is, as I said, it's a very complex issue, and it's something that one could go into great depths. But just on the sort of international versus the local, the state, I think that is what I would think becomes very, very important, because and it's something which is lacking. We haven't done enough of it. Even as I said, at the state level, we still do it, but really going much, much, much more decentralized than that, and seeing how the dynamics play out, especially in an urban context, which, as I said, is so quickly evolving and changing, and the dynamics are constantly changing. And now that we are seeing so much urbanization, how do we really deal with that? How do the local governments really deal with that? What are the structures? And institutionally making it simple, because I think sometimes we have multiple bodies which will be deciding. We have multiple bodies, regulatory bodies at a state level, at a local level. Each state has some very complex structures at times. There are different municipal bodies that are deciding various aspects. So I think all of that also needs to be streamlined and simplified. So I think that is also part of it, because if you have several different bodies, then there's always going to be that sort of challenge of how do we get a simple structure which everybody understands and which everyone is on board with. So I think that is the other piece of it, which really sort of needs to be looked at carefully.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. My concern and also a question related to this is here is that at the local level, gender sensitive approaches need to be inculcated to improve the sustainability and the reach of water and all the wash services, basically, by actually focusing on and also involving women throughout the whole process, whether it is for the design or the implementation and also the management. So basically, what Mr. V.R. Raman had also mentioned about handing the control of the resources to women. So what are your views on how do we embed this kind of a gender equity into the policy at all levels, from the top down or bottom up? What are the challenges and what are the prospects of such an initiative?
Yeah, I mean, challenges are massive. I think that is not, a surprise to any of us, that when it comes to, mainstreaming really gender, or making sure that gender is a very key part of any of the programs, any of the policies we look at, that is a big challenge. That is a big challenge at all levels across the board. But I think at the higher levels, the appreciation that needs to come, that gender is this very cross-cutting sort of issue. It cannot be something which is just left to one ministry. or one department. And I think that is a big thing that, we need to push for at the higher levels of policy making. And then, hopefully that is something which would percolate downwards as well, because we have these separate, ministries and departments, right, which look at, gender. And the fact actually is that gender cuts across everything, whether it's health, whether it's nutrition, whether it's water, it's sanitation, agriculture, environment. There is really no policy area that we look at where gender does not have a very, very big role to play. So I think that at the very outset, getting that appreciation, getting it reflected into the way our policy works, because it doesn't quite work this way right now. Gender is sort of this separate ministry department, and it's kind of looked at as a separate area. And that needs to change, that it's not a separate area, it's actually part of every single area that we're looking at. So I think that is, of course, it's a very difficult, big, high level thing to do, but it is fundamental. It is really fundamental to bringing about, large scale change if we want to. Then, of course, coming down at the more granular level, the local level. So as I said that, yes, even the ability of women to have that voice. So women across the board would have that voice. They would have a say. They would have some very, very important points to make. But the question is, are they able to express it? Are they heard? And that varies a lot. That itself varies a lot. So that is something that, obviously as a government, we have that role to play as a local government, that everyone's voice is equitably heard, and they have that platform to express it. So where that is inherently there in the local community, as I said, somewhere, our self-help groups, our other structures actually work phenomenally well. And there's so many programs that I've been involved with where, SHGs are so empowered, they are so strong, they have a voice, they play a fantastic role in monitoring what's going on. They have a fantastic role in flagging any concerns to the government, what is working, what is not working. So in those cases, of course, the role we end up playing, or a development partner ends up playing, is more of equipping them with maybe certain financial skills or certain technical skills. But in many other cases, it starts at a level even before that, financial, technical, all those skills can be built, capacity can be built. But first we need to get through the community dynamics itself, the social dynamics, the structures, the caste related issues, the religion related issues. And that is where often we have the challenge, which is even before we get to skill building or capacity enhancement or any of that. And again, that is where I think it's the governments working with the development partners, because just governments alone, can never be successful in something like this, which has complex community, dynamics at play, social dynamics at play. So development partners have to be involved in a very big way to see how can we actually go through those social systems and make sure that we create structures. We create structures at the local level, which are really, structures which are acceptable to everybody in the community, because ultimately it cannot be something which is okay with some, not okay with others, because again, then we will see that, it will not be as effective. So I think those are all things that need to be done at a more granular local level. But at a higher policy level, if we can simply even get the appreciation that gender cuts across all areas, reflect it in all our policy program planning, I think that itself will be a very, very big sort of change that we'll make. So yes, it's a very tough one to make. We worked for years and years, people who would have worked and they know that, we've talked for years of these challenges, but we really need to move towards that, because there is simply no other way of addressing this if we don't have gender, which is a part of all the different policies and programs that we're looking at.
Great, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, what are your views on the importance of collecting gender-sensitive data and use of gender analysis to determine who participates in the water programs and the institutions, and who is benefiting out of it and who is actually being left out?
Yeah, so I think data, obviously, it has a very big role to play. Data, and in fact, this is something that we have suggested, as NITI Aayog, that within, say the WCD ministry or even departments at the state levels, and then, going further down, there should be a dedicated unit which is looking at data of this kind, which is looking at the gender related indicators, data, analyzing them and coming up with, what are the changes we need to make across the board in our policies, in our programs, and equally in water or, other related areas. So I think that is very crucial. We do need something like that. That is something we've been pushing for, that we need this dedicated unit to be collecting, analyzing data on those metrics. But we have a long way to go in actually setting up all these data systems, because the data systems, the architecture, as we know at the country level, it's fragmented. There are multiple data systems. We might already be collecting a lot of metrics, but they might not be in one place. They might not be getting analyzed the way they should be. So I think that is something that we are trying to streamline, and this national data analytics platform that we're working towards at NIDM is going to look at a lot of these data related issues at a much broader level. But I think basically it's not just collecting the data, but actually what we end up often lacking on is the use of that data and its feedback into policy making. Its feedback into programs. A lot of the data is just being collected, but what is happening to that is often not even clear to the people involved in even collecting that data. So I think that is what we need to address, that yes, we can have hundreds of metrics, but what do we do with them? And how do we feed that back into policy making? How do we feed that back into making the changes that we need? That is where we need to focus our attention on. So those are, I think, some very, very big challenges. Those are country level challenges. So that's going to take a lot of time to address, but we're certainly moving towards addressing some of these issues, moving in that direction at least.
That's so good. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, how about your message to young women? How should they contribute from the planning and the policy perspectives, and also learn in this, as we move towards water-led, women-led water resource management?
Yeah, I think, my message would just be that I think we really need more women to have a voice, to have their say. As I said, women have a lot to offer, to contribute in all these areas, but we need them to come forward. We need them to, make sure that their voice is heard to the extent that they can. I mean, apart from what we need to do systemically to make sure that there's an enabling ecosystem, we need equally women to come forward and take interest in these areas. And I think capacity building or training programs are like this are also play a very important role, because it certainly provides an exposure. It's not that you're going to learn everything in 3 days, but there's an exposure to a range of issues. You get to hear from, a range of experts. And I think that's very, very useful. And I think that is something we need more of, so that, we can really enable this sort of learning, and more importantly, interest. We need interest of young people, young women in these very, very critical issues for our country. As I say, that these are some of the most critical issues, and they're going to become even bigger challenges in the years to come. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to contribute, to work in different capacities at the policy level, or even working with development partners. So I think that is what I would say, that it's a really critical, crucial area with lots of opportunities, and women should come forward and equip themselves with the necessary tools, and also the skill sets which can help them to make sure that they have a credible voice in these areas.
Certainly. Ma'am, and final question to you. Thank you so much for being so patient and generous with the question and answers. So as there was as there has been the target of Har Ghar Jal, Nal Ka Jal for India at 75, what should be the targets, or what are the targets that have been set for India at 2047 for the water sector?
Yeah, so I think 47, I mean, we've been working on a longer term vision. So I think we're still, working on finalizing a lot of that. We've been engaging with a lot of experts. So I think that is a longer term. We also have targets for SDGs in between, of course, 2030 targets. So I think there's a lot of that exercise is happening and is aligned with the SDGs, and, to go even beyond that as we look at a much broader time frame. So I think a lot of those precise targets will eventually come out once we have these discussions and deliberations. But I think it's very much, we're aligning with globally, where we think we should be, just customizing that and obviously bringing in the Indian context, but making sure that we, reach that level that we aspire to in the world. And I think that is something that would reflect in all the indicators and targets we set. But as I said, that these targets, indicators, they're only as good as our monitoring. They're only as good as the data that feeds into them, and they're only as good as the action we take based on that data. So I, at least, more than being one for just setting targets, I'm more concerned about what do we do with the data, how do we action it, and how it feeds back, into our policy in terms of what's going right and what's not going right. So for me personally, I think that is much, much more important. And I think that's more of the question that we should be asking. That yes, we have these targets. Obviously, we want universalization of these services. We want good quality. We want gender equity. We want all of these high level goals. But how are we actually going about achieving them? What's working for us? What's not working? And are we making those course corrections? I think those are really the very crucial policy questions, at least, that we keep asking, and I think stakeholders outside should keep raising as well.
Very valid. Thank you, ma'am. This was really wonderful talking to you. And actually, you provide all the time. The best part is that you provide candid assessment and the responses, and not just. And that is the best part of being, an observer of policy and a practitioner of policy. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And it was great having you, and thank you for taking time from your schedule and also responding to our questions. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I now hand it over to Nishi.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, we have come to our closing session of our 3-day online certificate training program on women-led sustainable and decentralized water resource management, a multi-stakeholders perspective, jointly being organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, and IMPRI Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, New Delhi. We have with us Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, Head ECDRM, NIDM New Delhi, to provide his concluding remarks. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Nishi. And first of all, my congratulations and greetings to the entire team for a wonderful delivery. And I am sure the participants have really liked the deliberations, because the kind of interaction that was taking place following the sessions. So that tells that how insightful were the discussions. And this topic itself is very, very important. As I was speaking in the inaugural day also, that Honorable Prime Minister, who has given a 10-point agenda on disaster risk management, he has emphasized that now we should look at women as leaders. And that is not only a gender issue, but that is an issue for strengthening our overall society and finding a kind of a holistic approach where all the segments of society, they work together and we get appropriate leadership, and we develop a kind of a network where all the segments of society start looking at this issue, which is very, very important issue of sustainable development. Because in sustainable development goal, although there is only one goal that is directly related with water, but we find that more than 10 goals are associated with water. So that is very important. And in our country, there has been very significant initiatives for community-led water management, but community-led water management where women have shown the leadership, those has not been adequately documented. So this has been really a wonderful program where the speakers brought very good insights and very good examples also. Even some examples which were not even been highlighted in the past publications or past programs. So I think that has been an important aspect.
as an outcome of this program, as I was discussing in the previous programs also with Dr. Simi and Dr. Arjun, maybe past programs are already passed, but this topic being very important, very important, I would say. So we should come up with a small publication based on this. And I think we can request each of the speaker to give a brief note on his deliberation, and we can integrate with the kind of questions those were asked, and we can think of a joint publication on this, so that whatever has been discussed should not be limited only with this program and the participants who could attend, because there are many people who could not join this program, would also like to take the benefit of this very important discourse. So let us think on those lines also, because this issue I consider not only of the importance for the present time, but futuristic dimension also. Like the water is going to be a serious challenge. The way we are witnessing the uncertainties, and this climate change sixth assessment report that has shown that really we are going to have contrast situations, like somewhere it is lack of water, somewhere it is too much of water, and maybe several places we will be having both, like too much of water and then too little water also after a few months. So uh, this we have to see. Second aspect that has emerged from this program also, that rural areas but also urban areas, now we have to look for women-led community initiatives for water management, uh, not only limited to agriculture sector, agriculture or farming sector or the household issues in villages, but outside that boundary also. So in the peri-urban systems in cities, there also women can show, and women have shown in some cases effective leadership. So I think this has been really a wonderful program. So my sincere thanks to all the speakers, because they really did hard work to prepare their lectures, and to the entire team, to Dr. Simi, Nishi, Dr. Arjun, Dr. Kopal, and everybody. So thank you very much, and thanks to all the participants also, because their interest, their participation, the interactions, that has made this program so lively and so interactive and very successful. So thank you very much, and we can further discuss separately the point I suggested as a follow-up activity. So thank you, and over to you, Dr. Simi.
Sure, certainly, sir. Very well taken. And thank you so much for joining us and for your guidance for the entire program and for all the previous programs also. So thank you so much. And we'll certainly keep this in mind, and we'll take it forward with you. Thank you. So Nishi, so I would like to just request Anshula to put the poll, and also request all the participants to fill in their feedback at the earliest, and then we can move on to the next concluding part. Great. So yes, Nishi, over to you. Thank you all. Yes, Nishi.
Thank you, ma'am. And now I would like to invite Dr. Kopal from NIDM to share about links for feedback forms and certificates. Yes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Yes. So, dear participants, Dr. Kopal will be telling you how you'll be getting your certificate. So please pay attention.
Can you please share the document? Thank you so much. Yeah, so first of all, I would like to congratulate entire team of IMPRI for this really wonderful sessions and conducting this entire training in such an amazing way. So congratulations, and I hope everyone must have benefited from this very important sessions. So right. So now I will explain quickly about the certificate, how you can download the certificates. So can we scroll it down, please? You can directly come to the download certificate part. Please scroll it down. Yeah. Right. So after 2 to 3 days, you will have to go again back to the portal where you have enrolled for the course. So what in the where you have enrolled for the course, you will see this kind of a feedback link will be generated. So what you have to do is fill up that feedback form, and once you fill up that feedback form and submit it, you will see a tab saying generate certificate. So by clicking that tab, you can generate your certificate, but please make sure you log into it after 2 to 3 days. It will take this much time. Yeah. And for any other queries, you can directly contact with me. I will drop my email ID here, and I will help you out with the process. Any other doubt?
Yeah. Thank you.
Is it clear?
Yes. Thank you,
Yes.
Dr. Kopal. Yes, Nishi, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Kopal. And in case you experience any issues, please write to us at learning.impri@gmail.com. In these 3 days, we have tried our best to have this training program as engaging as possible by having experts from various sectors related to water management. Overall, it has been an excellent learning experience for all of us, and I hope you all must have gained a lot from this 3-day online certificate training program. Finally, I would like to propose a vote of thanks to our eminent panelists for today's and previous sessions. Mr. V.R. Raman, Mr. Tikinder Singh Panwar, and Ms. Urvashi Prasad from today's session, Ms. Anjali Makhija, Dr. Marcela D'Souza, and Dr. Mansi Bal Bhargava from yesterday's session, and Mr. Ranjan K. Panda, Professor Varsha Khandkar, and Mr. Maulik Sisodia from the first session for their valuable insights and knowledge sharing. I would also like to thank Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal and Professor Anil Kumar Gupta for their support and guidance. I would like to thank Dr. Kopal from NIDM for her sincere efforts in conducting of the program and managing feedbacks and certificates. I would also like to thank each of the participants for joining this training program and congratulate you on behalf of IMPRI for making this investment in your professional development and learning. Last but not the least, sincere thanks to Dr. Simi Mehta, Dr. Arjun Kumar, and my fellow colleagues, Dr. Anshula Mehta, Mahima Kapoor, Malcolm Anthony, and Ritika Sundar from IMPRI for putting this program together. Thank you so much. Please be safe and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Thank you.